Blue Jackets are in New York tonight to try and snap this 3-game losing streak that they have got going on. Today, we're going to talk about how they can do that, and we're going to check in with the Monsters as well. It's not Monday, but we're going to do a Monsters Thursday today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see me for the first time. I have a face. Hi, this is my YouTube debut. I am, as always, your host, Jay Forster. You can see down on the corner here. You can find my Twitter handle there. And I'm very glad that you are here with me today in this very exciting first ever YouTube episode of Locked On Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and now YouTube. So make sure you are subscribed on your podcast app of choice, subscribed on YouTube, leave your likes, your comments, just anything you want. I appreciate you, whether you're a first-time listener or watcher or a regular listener. Sweet to be a regular watcher. I appreciate you. Today, we are going to be talking about the upcoming game against the New York Islanders. The Blue Jackets have done pretty well against the Islanders so far this season. They have a series, they've only played them once, but they won in overtime. They haven't played them since the 22nd of October, which is, it's been a minute. The Islanders kind of had a slow start to the season. They've picked it up a little bit now. They're still lagging behind the Blue Jackets. I don't think they're going to catch them. They are 9 points behind. They have got 4 games in hand somehow. Still, the Islanders have somehow played way less games than literally every other team. I don't understand how that's happened, but it has. After a really, really brutal start, the Islanders have picked it up. They're 21, 24, and 8 the minute. They got 30 points, and they are just behind the Blue Jackets for 5th in the Metro. 4th in the Metro is looking pretty much out of reach at the minute, I think. The Washington Capitals lost in overtime last night and then won their previous game, I believe against Seattle. So they have increased their lead on the Blue Jackets. They are 12 points ahead of the Blue Jackets with 2 more games to play. So the Blue Jackets have a couple of games in hand, which is not terrible. Hopefully a win against the Islanders can both increase the lead on them and also decrease the gap between Washington and Columbus. And then the Minnesota Wild are in town on Saturday, or Friday, I think. Another big game. Haven't faced the Minnesota Wild yet. We're going to be talking about that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blue Jackets. But today, let's talk about the Islanders because, like I said, it's been a minute. They were, I think it was like the 6th game of the season or something. They played super, super early and then nothing since then because of like schedule weirdness. So the Blue Jackets have 3 more games to play against them. They've got, obviously, tonight, and then they've got the end of March and then the 1st of April. It looks like they've got a home and home with the Islanders. I think playoffs pretty much going to be sorted out by then, but it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up. Like I said, the Islanders have really picked it up. They had a really, really slow start to the season. Everyone was super confused because they're supposed to be the New York-based team that's good, but their underlying team stats seem like they're going pretty good. The goaltending is also looking pretty good. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to quickly check in with the Blue Jackets before we do some more kind of in-depth looking at the Islanders. Eric Robinson, I believe, has been activated from IR, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that we see him either tonight against New York or potentially tomorrow against Minnesota. Jonas Korpisalo, I think, starts tonight. there hasn't been any kind of official notice on either of these things. But he has been practicing for a couple of days. He's been activated off IR, I believe. JF Brube has been sent back down to Cleveland. And of the two games, I think the Islanders is probably a better welcome back for Korpisalo. The Wild are struggling a little bit at the minute, but I still think they are a much better team than the Islanders. And honestly, the Islanders play kind of low event hockey. So, if you want to ease Korpisalo back into this level of play, then the Islanders are probably a much better option. So hopefully getting Robinson back, who has missed a while with a knee sprain, I believe. Getting Korpisalo back, which will be good to rest Elvis, because he has played a lot in the past couple of weeks since he returned from his own injury. And, the way you injure goalies is you play them too much. So hopefully having Korpisalo back, hopefully having two healthy goalies will be beneficial to the team as they continue this stretch towards the trade deadline, which, by the way, is not March 12th. So I do apologize to literally everyone who I've said, oh, the trade deadline is on Saturday, because it's not. I don't know what I was talking about. It's March 21st. I have been looking at 1 and 2, or I've been looking at 2 and 1 and seeing 1 and 2. And so I have spent the past 2 weeks being like, oh, the trade deadline is super close. Why has nothing happened? It's because it's not happening for another couple of weeks. So, if you have noticed that I've been making this mistake, then I apologize. If you haven't noticed, then welcome to the show. Occasionally, I say dumb things like that. Players to watch for the Blue Jackets are going to be Oliver Bjorkstrand, who has 4 goals in his last 5 games. Somehow he's a streaky player. We know this. He scores in bunches and then doesn't score for ages, but he hit 20 goals against Toronto. I still think his first 30-goal season is well within reach. And against an Islanders team that doesn't score a bunch, I think having guys like Bjorkstrand, but they should be on watch. Patrick Laine has 6 points in his last 5 games, so he also should be on notice for. I think he's probably due a 2-goal performance after that rocket of a shot against Toronto. I would be surprised if he doesn't get on the score sheet against the Islanders, extending his point streak. I think he's back up to 3 or 4 games in the point streak after having his 11-game one snapped. He started a new one, doesn't seem to be slowing down much. So, that's good. Jake Voracek has 5 assists in his last 5 games. And I think he's creeping up on 40 assists, which seems bonkers. Like I said, goaltending, I would assume it's going to be Korpisalo. There's really no way to know because they don't seem to tell anyone until right before the game. So probably around the time you're listening or watching to this, you'll probably find out who the goaltender is. But I would assume it's going to be Korpisalo for reasons of that's what I would do. So I look forward to seeing Elvis Merzlikins tonight because they never seem to do what I would like to do. In a minute, we're going to take a look at the Islanders. Like I said, it's not a hugely different team to the one that the Blue Jackets faced at the start of the season, personnel-wise, but playing-wise, it's quite different. So we're going to have a look at their team stats and all of those things. But first, I will show you about BetOnline because it's that time of year again. College basketball tournament is finally upon us. That means it is March Madness. We are in it. And from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information. They remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, apart from this one, obviously, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting. They've got hockey, they've got UFC, they've got wrestling, they've got football when it comes back, they've got baseball when it comes back, and your favorite Vegas casino games. You can find it all at betonline.net. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action because BetOnline is where the game starts. So the Islanders are kind of a similar-ish team to the Blue Jackets, honestly. They don't score a bunch. They don't shoot a bunch. They have pretty similar team stats as the Blue Jackets. Their power play is 22nd to the Blue Jackets' 23rd. Their penalty kill is 9th to the Blue Jackets' 16th. The penalty kill has slipped a little bit in that game against Toronto. They have pretty good face-off percentage. They basically don't score in games. They are 27th in the league with 2.57 goals for per game. But to the Blue Jacket, who have crept into the top 10. They're at 3.28, ninth in the league. But on the flip side, the Islanders don't allow a lot of goals. They have an average of 2.77, which is good for ninth in the league, versus the Blue Jackets, who continue to hover around 30th in the league because they just can't seem to stop allowing goals, as we saw in the game against Toronto, where they allowed Toronto to score 5 goals. But it's fine. I'm over it. We've moved on. It's a new day. The Islanders can't seem to score goals, and the Blue Jackets can't seem to stop allowing goals. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. And the flip side, the Blue Jackets love to score goals. The Islanders don't seem to like allowing them very much. So this is either going to be a 6-5 disaster game or a 2-1 overtime game where both of the goalies look incredible. And I haven't decided which way it's going to go yet. Players to watch. Noah Dobson has turned into quite a good defenseman for the Islanders. Obviously, they lost Nick Leddy at, I believe, last year's trade deadline. He went, or in the offseason. Jean-Gabriel Pageau has 4 assists in that time frame as well. But honestly, it's the goaltenders, I think, that are the kind of the players to watch for me anyway. I don't know, again, who's starting. Ilya Sorokin, because all of the goalies in New York all of the teams in New York have to have a goalie with the initials IS, I guess. Ilya Sorokin is 18, 12, and 7 with a 9.23 save percentage and 5 shutouts on the season. Semyon Varlamov has kind of slipped into backup status and has been struggling this season. Well, no, that's unfair. He's 3, 12, and 1, but he has a 9.11 save percentage. So I think it's probably pretty fair to say he's not the one that's struggling. The team seems to struggle behind him, which is, again, something we've kind of seen with the Blue Jackets is they play differently depending on which goalie's in there. And I haven't watched a ton of the Islanders play this season, but apparently, judging by these records, that seems to be how the Islanders are doing as well. So, like I said, they've got a pretty good penalty kill. Power play kind of dismal, same as the Blue Jackets. So I would imagine special teams are not really going to come into play here, and they don't score a bunch of goals, but they also don't allow a bunch of goals, which is the opposite of the Blue Jackets score a bunch of goals and also allow a bunch of goals. They are kind of the antithesis of the Blue Jackets we may win, but I may die. They seem to be playing I have it on good authority that there is a hockey game happening, but we want no part in that. So it'll be interesting to see how those two things mesh. I feel like it's going to be a very stoppable object meets movable force, or stoppable force meets movable object. There you go. I can use words. I genuinely have no idea how this game is going to go. It could legitimately go one way. It could go the other way. It could be a blowout for the Blue Jackets. It could be a blowout for the Islanders. It could be a 1-0 shootout win for a team. I really hope not, because shootouts are bad and I hate them. A 1-0 overtime win would be fine, but please, God, no more shootouts. I'm tired of shootouts. I hate them. They're a coin flip. At least overtime is exciting and has more actual hockey skills at length. I will maybe do an episode in the off season about overtime versus the shootout and my opinion of it. In a minute, we are going to move from the Blue Jackets' woes to the Cleveland Monsters' wins. They are doing pretty well at the minute. I tweeted a fun stat that I'm going to get into in just a minute. That is what's coming next on Locked On Blue Jackets. So the Cleveland Monsters went through a 9-game losing streak earlier in the season, which they snapped, I believe, in mid-February. Since they snapped that win streak with a massive 2-1 overtime, I don't even think it was overtime. I think it was a regulation win against the Utica Comets, who are the best team in the division by a country mile. The Cleveland Monsters have gone 7-1-2 7-2-1-1, or 7-4. For people who don't pay a ton of attention to the AHL, instead of doing wins, losses, and overtime losses, they measure wins, losses, overtime losses, and shootout losses. So since that 9-game losing streak, the Cleveland Monsters have put together a record of 7 wins, 2 regulation losses, an overtime loss, and a shootout loss, or 9.9 games where they have at least a point in the last 11, which is just night and day to the 9 games previous to that, or the 11 games previous to that, where they lost 9 or 10 of them. I think it helps that the Blue Jackets have been getting healthier. They've had a lot of their players given back. Jake Christensen is back with them. Trey Fix-Wolanski is back with them. Jake Christensen, who scored last night in an incredibly exciting game against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. The Cleveland Monsters would end up winning that one 3-2 in overtime. The Monsters have kind of put a lot of things to bed in these games as well. I talked at length on Monsters Musings, which is kind of on a little bit of a hiatus at the minute, but that's the podcast I do with Dina Weinheimer over at Field Pass Hockey. They have struggled on special teams. They have struggled to score goals. They do a bunch of stuff not super well, but they've been pretty good in these past 10 or so games. The power play was doing really well. Last night, they scored 2 power play goals, one from the aforementioned Jake Christensen, who just got his first NHL goal the other day with Columbus, and Carson Meyer, who I think has had a lot of criticism this season for kind of having that sophomore slump. We had a really good season last year, and this year he hasn't quite been able to put it together in the same way. And so I think there's been some cognitive dissonance, I guess, as to his game. So it was really good to see him get one on the power play. And then Dylan Simpson, the captain, finishes it in overtime, gives them the win, and the Blue Jackets, the Cleveland Monsters can continue their climb back up to hopefully 5th in the division. The AHL playoffs are super weird. I think it's the top 5 teams in the division get to make the playoffs, or in the North anyway. It's a different amount depending on what division it is, but I think it's the top 5 teams. The first seed will get a bye to the second round, and then 2 will play 5, 3 will play 4, and then it'll go from there. So if they can climb up past, I believe Syracuse and Belleville are the teams they have to beat, and they're both still pretty within reach. The North Division that the Monsters are in is kind of a weird one this season. There's 2 really good teams, and then everyone else is just kind of okay, and then there's the Monsters and Belleville at the bottom, who are just not very good. But I think Belleville is definitely catchable. I think Syracuse is also definitely catchable. I don't know that any team above them is catchable. I believe next is the Toronto Marlies, who I don't think they could catch. The Rochester Americans lost to Laval last night as well, so that helps a little bit, I guess. Laval is really kind of putting things together in a fun and exciting way at the minute. So again, I don't see us catching those. But if the Monsters can creep up on Belleville, then they have something to work with. Playoffs are kind of different in the AHL in that there's no point really at which it makes sense to be like, okay, well, we're gonna count ourselves out and regroup for the next season, because they don't affect the draft position. They don't really affect the trade deadline. If the Monsters miss the playoffs and the Blue Jackets end up making them for some reason, which I don't think is super likely, then obviously that gives the Blue Jackets a bigger pool of players to work from in terms of black aces. I think, as college seasons start to come to an end, the Blue Jackets just signed a left winger out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison earlier today, or last night, actually, to an entry-level contract. He's just finished his 4 years there, so I imagine he will go straight to the Monsters. But it's college free agent season. I would be very, very surprised if we do not see Kent Johnson inking his entry-level deal in the next kind of 2 to 3 weeks. I don't imagine he'll go to Cleveland. I think he'll probably go to the Blue Jackets and maybe kind of bounce between the two, depending. But I could see him making an appearance in the next couple of weeks, and that's kind of where the Monsters are. Is well, they're probably not making the playoffs, but finishing strong, getting plenty of ice time for their young, good players, getting some college free agents in. I imagine that's where this uh, free agent from Wisconsin is going to go, and I'm excited to see how he turns out. A couple of the scouting guys that I've talked to are really high on him, and excited to see how he does when he turns pro. So that is something that we'll probably take a look at in the next couple of weeks. The next time we check in with the Monsters. But that's kind of all I've got for you today. Tomorrow we will be doing a squadcast. We've got Seth Topal of Locked On Wild here to come and talk all things Minnesota, because it's been about 800 years since these teams faced each other. And, we got to check in with our expansion team buddy over there in the Western Conference. Minnesota had a really exciting start to the season and has kind of declined a little bit recently. So I'm going to be sure to ask Seth what's going on with that, and of course all about their superstar Kirill Kaprizov. So that's what's coming up tomorrow on Locked On Blue Jackets. But as for today, thank you all for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day, or your first watch of the day if you are on YouTube. I've been Jay Forster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, which you can see down at the corner here if you need to know how to spell that. Locked On Blue Jackets is wherever you can get your podcasts, and on YouTube. We're also on Twitter at @LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Make sure you go and make your second listen of the day after you've listened to this one, of course. Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Steele Rodin and Flip Livingston are giving you the tips to make your fantasy hockey team winners. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.